Ti he Māori ora. Inga manga, inga waka, inga haere whā. Tēnā koutou katoa. Te mea te atua, tuatahi. E te atua, tēnā koe. Tō tātou mate, haere atu rā. Te whara. Te wharei. E tu nei, tēnā koe. Ko papa tua nuku, kia waro, tēnā koe. Ka haru, hahu, ki te hunga ora. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome, I'm Councillor Vince Coccarello, and I'm just going to explain what I've just gone through there, just so you understand. At first, I'm welcoming everyone where they're coming from the four winds of the earth, and how you've got here, by car, by walk. Then I've acknowledged our maker, and acknowledged the building that we're in, and the mana that it has with it. And lastly, I've acknowledged the people who have come before us, and where we will all end up one day. But most of all, I've welcomed each one of you 3 times to this building and to this meeting. A lot of us come with baggage, sometimes good, sometimes bad. But it's all baggage, and it's important to what makes us up. This baggage, what I want you to be well aware of, is the presentation that's been had to you today, which is our long-term plan, is going to be presented by Sandra. And she's going to be talking about a lot of that stuff. And I want you to be well aware that while we all have baggage, and we all have things that we all have to deal with, I would like us to all have that ounce of respect for one another. Both respect for the speaker, and also respect for those who are asking questions amongst us. Because I expect some good questions. I'm going to hand it over to Sandra now. Or do you want me to get the councillors to introduce themselves?
It's up to you.
We'll get... Her Worship the Mayor, would you like to stand up and introduce yourself so everyone sees where you are?
Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou katoa. Kia ora.
And councillors. Don't be shy.
Simon Reid, Manu Peri, Manu Hikiawa.
Living Phil Hoss, a Curra Ward, but previously a Green Bay Ward Councillor, and I've been through every long-term plan, so I know where we started and where we're going to. Thank you.
Councillor Tyler, Okara Ward.
Kia ora koutou katoa, Carol Peters for the Hikarangi.
Over to you, Sandra.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou. Ko Sandra Boardman ahau, kei te mihi ahau ki a koutou, ko au kai whakahaere a rupu hāpuri. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. My name's Sandra Boardman. I'm the General Manager for the Community Group, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here tonight. And hopefully we'll have some great questions, as Councillor Coccarello has identified, some great feedback for our long-term planning process, so that you can help us make this plan the best one yet, because that's the purpose of this evening. I'll start with some health and safety messages. There's only 3 of them. There's no smoking or vaping on our site. In the event of an emergency, there are emergency exits over there, and out through the concourse, and the assembly point is under the tree. And last but not least, the toilets are out through this door, gentlemen on the right, ladies on the left, I think, but just check before you open the door. And if you could put your cell phones on mute, that would be great. Thank you. Welcome. So tonight's presentation, you'll see lots of equipment around. We are live streaming this out onto our webpage and possibly Facebook, not sure. It will be recorded for so that people can access it on our website later if they want to. And Dan is very kindly signing so that all of our community will be able to appreciate and understand what is going on. So thank you, Dan. Right, I will start the presentation. And we've got a video to start with, which is quite cool.
Our district has many taonga, and as a community, it's our responsibility to take care of it. Council would like your feedback on the next long-term plan, so that together we can protect and take care of our takiwā.
You can have your say on the long-term plan by going to the Whangarei District Council website. Our community is about to hit 100,000 and the council is planning for this growth. To ensure these beautiful spots are accessible to everyone, council is spending $4 million on maintaining tracks and has $37 million in the plan to improve our shared path and cycleway network.
We all want travelling in our CBD to be safe and stress-free. The plan is to put more investment than ever before into transportation this decade. Council has some ideas on how to enhance our CBD so that more of us can shop, dine, live and just enjoy our city.
A lot of positive changes happened in Whangarei, like sealing of rural roads. The draft plan has $47 million more to spend over the next 10 years for sealing of roads to make them safer for our growing district. Roading is just one part of the plan. You can submit your thoughts on the WDC website.
There's no doubt that climate change is having an impact on our landscape and lifestyles. That's why Council is planning to invest $3.7 million to assess and manage climate change risks.
To protect our future, we all want to reduce our impact on the environment. Council is further planning to reduce emissions and help our community become more sustainable and resilient.
The government has offered $60 million towards a new conference and event centre at Aruku Landing. But council need to know if you're okay with them taking on this project and pitching in for it too, along with funding for further development at Hikiawa and Forum North. All of this helps to draw people to our region, showcasing local talent and creating jobs. Do you agree with council's plans for these projects? Go to the website and tell them what you think.
Whangarei takiwā arohatia. We love this place. We want to keep investing in our people and our district. We've built a budget that we believe is balanced and affordable and future focused. If you want to read a copy of our long-term plan consultation document, check out our website, go into customer services, any of your local libraries. We really want to hear from you. Me kōrero, let's talk.
So, why are we here? We're here to talk about our long-term plan and to answer any questions that you've got. You'll have seen this document as you came in. Hopefully you've all got copies of it, and this presentation roughly follows the order of things that are in that document for those of you that want to follow along. Now you might have something that you need fixed, a pothole or something that you want to report to us, and there's an opportunity to do that at the end. Sarah will be at the back and she will write out your problem and we will get it fixed for you. And at the end of this presentation, which I'll whip through as quickly as I can, there will be the opportunity for questions. So, a lot has happened since we last connected with our community. We've done a lot, and we've all had a bit of a year really, a bit of a biblical year. We've had drought, we've had floods, and we've had COVID. We haven't had a plague of locusts, but we're getting there. And we've faced some challenges. Our housing challenges have got worse. We've actually had growth, and the impact of COVID wasn't what we expected. We're still seeing growth within our region. We're seeing more people coming into our region, and growth means that we need to be future focused as a council. We need to focus about what we're going to need in the future and how we're going to meet the changing expectations of our community. These are some of the things that we had in our last long-term plan, and I can do this without unloading that one. Yeah, here we go. Some of the things that you will be aware of is we finished the LED streetlight upgrade. We've upgraded some of the central city intersections, the Porowini intersection with Tarewa and with Manu Road. We've finished or done quite a bit more on the Carmo shared path, which is a fantastic facility, starts just outside of Forum North. We've upgraded sports facilities, we've opened playgrounds, we've funded more community-led projects, and we've done some strategies so that we've got a focus on arts and culture. And we'll maybe touch on that later. 2021, this year, we're building on that. We are completing the Stage 1 Hikarangi sewer upgrade. You've seen the new blue bins, which allow us to be really forward in terms of recycling and what we're able to do for our community. We've begun constructing the new Civic Centre, and for those of you that live near it, can I apologise now for the banging. It won't last too much longer, but we just need to get those piles in so we've got something solid to build on. We began constructing the new Faux Valley water treatment plant, and that is nearly complete, and that will provide sufficient water for many years for our growing population. Last year we provided $3 million worth of relief packages to ratepayers, to community groups and to local businesses, because council recognised that COVID was going to impact on our community and our businesses. All of that's great, and this next plan builds on those things. So as I said, Whangarei is growing. We're almost at 100,000, and we expect our population to be 140,000 by 2050. Now, I'll be getting on a bit by then, I'll be 90 by then, but you know, we need to have things that are going to meet the needs of our community for many generations to come, and that is a lot of the focus of council. Councils are around infrastructure, roads, pipes, water, sewage, stormwater, that actually provide services for generations. It's not a short-term business that we're in many respects. That picture on the screen is the Faux Valley water treatment plant as they were starting construction, and later on in the presentation you'll see an architect's impression of the final building, which is just about there actually. We went through a process where our councillors have been listening to you as a community, and they determined what the priorities of our long-term plan should be from these conversations with our community. And they're those on the screen. Transport, so roads, cycleways, footpaths. Sustainability, so that's about how we adapt to climate change and how we mitigate or reduce our impact on the environment in which we live. The revitalisation of the city centre. So we want our city centre to have more people shopping, eating, living and playing in our city centre, and that was one of the priorities that they identified. What could we do to promote that? There are also things that council identified that it wants to continue to advocate for, and one of those is the expansion of Northport, and also advocating for the potential relocation of some of the Navy to our area. And finally, supporting housing, so having a supporting role in housing. We recognise that there's an acute housing shortage in our district, and whilst it is not our role to build public houses, we certainly have a supporting role in doing so. So those were some of many priorities. There was a very long list actually that it was whittled down from. And there are lots of trade-offs when trying to determine what to invest in. And this next 10-year budget, yes, it needs to be focused on the future, but it also needs to be affordable for our ratepayers. In our consultation document, you'll see that there's 4 key issues that we're consulting on, and they're those on the screen. And I'll go through those with you now in just a bit of detail. So the first issue is, how do we fund and how do we afford what we need? So last year, as a result of COVID, we reduced our planned rates rise by 2%. And because we've got sustained growth, which has continued through COVID and is projected to continue further, we believe that we need to catch up. So what we're proposing in the long-term plan is a 1-year catch-up. So this is only in the first year. A 2% overall increase in the rates. Inflation, those two is what we would normally have. And then just for this 1 year, a 2% catch-up. So that means in the first year, what we're proposing is a rates increase of 6.5%. And then for the subsequent years, we're proposing a rates increase of 4.5%. So that's the proposal that is in our long-term plan. Now another option would be to limit the rates increase to simply 2% plus this thing that we call LGCI, which is the local government equivalent of an inflationary adjuster. So inflation plus 2%, so a lower level. And if we choose to do that, that means that we won't have this rates catch-up. And over the course of our 10-year plan, that means that we won't have collected $18 million of funding. So as you can imagine, that will require us to go and have a look at what we do and what we can afford to do, and possibly make efficiencies. Now, none of us like paying rates. I think I can say that sort of fairly strongly. But if we look at how our rates compare to other towns, this is information produced by the Taxpayers Union, and that shows that actually the rates that Whangarei District levy these are the residential rates, are in the lower third of the whole of New Zealand. And although we're planning a rates increase of 6.5%, there are a number of councils that next year are in their long-term plans planning higher rates increase. So Hamilton, for instance, New Plymouth, they're both planning higher rates increases. Some are planning similar, and some are planning lower. So the Far North, for instance, is planning a lower level of rates increase. But it does to an extent depend on your starting point. Now, another way of thinking about it is, well, yes, you know, our rates may appear to be low, but actually our average wages are low as well. So this is a different way of looking at it. So this graph here, this is the average earnings. So the higher up you are, the higher your average earnings are. And this axis here is how much your rates are. So your higher rates are up that end and your lower rates are down this end. Now we sit here, which means that whilst we've got relatively modest salaries within our district, we also have relatively modest rates. The place you really don't want to be is over here, where you've got modest salaries and high rates. So, different way of looking at it. So how do we propose spending our money? And you can see on there, we're spending it on all sorts of things. And obviously, if like me, you don't pay for wastewater or water, you know, they're not included. But for those people that live in the city particularly, that's how we propose to spend each dollar. So 2 cents out of every dollar on the libraries, 30 cents out of every dollar on roading. A different way of thinking about this, one that my boss really likes to think about, is that actually your rates are roughly the same as your power bill. So you get all of this here. So you get transport, stormwater, solid waste, libraries, all of these lovely things for the same price as your power bill, which is a different way of looking at it. Right, the second issue that we're particularly keen on feedback from you is on spaces for gathering. Now I said I'd refer back to our arts and culture strategy. So we've got lots of investment within our district on arts, and we've obviously got the Huntavasa Museum that's coming near to completion. But what we haven't got is, for a town of a similar size, is a lot of places for public gatherings. So there's a few options within the long-term plan that we're keen on getting your feedback on. So we're proposing, our preferred option is that we allocate funding across 3 sites. The first of these is for Uruku Landing. Now the government, through their COVID relief package, have offered $60 million towards that. And what we would need to provide or contribute to that is $23 million. And Northern Regional Council would also contribute. So the proposal is that we spend $23 million contribution to that. We would also wear the risk of any overspends in that particular project. But the project at the end of it would be owned by council, so it would be a public facility. The second thing that we think we should invest in is the second phase of the Hikiawa Cultural Centre. And I'm sure many of you have seen this, with the carving shed and the waka store. The second phase is a indoor-outdoor conference, exhibition, theatre type space down on the Hikiawa Peninsula. Great vision that they've got for it. We as a council contributed to their first phase, and the proposal is that we also contribute, in this case $5 million, towards the second phase of that development. And the third thing that we're proposing to invest in, which is towards the end of the 10-year plan, is upgrading these facilities. $12 million sounds like a lot, but when you've got to upgrade from the roof right down to the floor, and potentially you've got to knock down a building, it's actually, that's the kind of money it costs. So improvements to the existing facilities, and that would cover this suite, the exhibition hall, and the Captain Bougainville Theatre. Now, an alternative might be to do something different, and that would be maybe to allocate budget towards one of those. Or it might be to build a council-owned theatre or a trust-owned theatre for $55 million on this site. So the proposals that we've got are for conference centres. They're not for an all-singing, all-dancing theatre with a fly tower, sort of what I refer to as a Muppets type theatre, you know, the kind of thing. They're not like that. But, you know, one option might be to do that, to find $55 million. Now, if we don't do these, it actually won't impact on our rates because this will be debt funded. But like I say, three options. Our preferred option is to invest in the three. The third issue that we're keen to get your feedback on is sustainability. So that's climate change and sustainability. What we're proposing within the long-term plan is to invest $3.7 million towards climate change and waste minimisation across the 10 years of the plan. That includes looking at adaptation measures, mitigation measures, and minimising waste. Now, an alternate to that one would be to invest more, to put $7.4 million towards that. And in that case, we could accelerate our efforts in that area. Or we could allocate no new funding and stick with the status quo. This is the third issue that we're keen to get your feedback on. The fourth issue is the revitalisation of the city centre. Now, when I first came to Whangarei, I couldn't quite work out where the city centre was because it's a bit dispersed. And as you know, we've got the lovely laneway and the shops and things around there, and then we've got a bit of a gap, and then we've got the waterfront. So this is all about linking those. So the proposal is to spend $13 million to make improvements to James and John Street, and that would link the waterfront area and our CBD. So there'd be more pedestrian space and seating. It would reduce vehicle access, and we'd have new lights, new street furniture, and much better access to the waterfront. And that would give us the type of environment that you see in other cities where there's lots going on and it's a vital CBD, and that's what we want in Whangarei. So that's the proposal. And alternatives to that might be to add more funding, $21 million, and also include Cameron and Robert Street. So you've got a much bigger corridor that links the waterfront and the CBD. Or we could do less and put no additional spend towards revitalising our CBD and stay with what we've got. So there are options. There are other things that you'll find within the plan, particularly a boost for transportation. So $47 million, as you heard in the presentation, towards sealing rural roads across 10 years of the plan. There's plans to upgrade the Riverside Drive and Onarahi roads, and that's because, as you know, the population out that way towards the heads is increasing, so it's becoming a major thoroughfare and it needs better transport links. So that's what that's about. Also extending our cycleways and our shared paths, the Carmo shared path along Bream Bay and the city centre, so that we've got alternative ways of getting in and out of the city than getting in your car. And a lot of those, or in fact all of those projects, are subject to some subsidy from Waka Kotahi, which is the New Zealand Transport Agency. So we're assuming within our plan that we will get the usual level of subsidy that we normally get from that agency towards our plans. Looking ahead, we've got quite a few projects that you'll see within there. We've got a new town basin park, so that will be adjacent to the Huntawasser alongside the river. There is the Civic Centre that we've spoken about earlier. Work has already begun on that. The piles are going in quite noisily at the moment. Spoken about the Riverside Drive and the upgrade of Onarahi roads. There's an upgrade to the roof of the Seminoff Stadium. You'll also find within the document reference to wanting to seek feedback on a new trust for the Northland Event Centre, which is the Seminoff Stadium. And Rugby World Cup, we know it's been postponed, but it's going to be in 22. It will be a fantastic tournament and it will bring the spotlight on our city. We will actually have more matches in Whangarei than Auckland will have. Way more than Eden Park. And what's more, we've got the first match. So it's going to be a great event, but it's going to happen in 2022, not 2021. This is the destination playground that we've got planned for Pohe Island, which you look at it and it makes you want to be a kid again. It's a great looking place. Or a teenager. So awesome skate park as well. Looking ahead, we've got other projects outside the city. So sea walls in various places. We've got new sports fields at Parua Bay, Ruakaka, and upgrades to other places. We've got environmental improvements and additional toilets at Matapauri. There's a playground that we're going to build in partnership with the developer at One Tree Point. Road sealing and a skate park at Hikarangi, which the community have been asking us for a while. And then looking further ahead, I said earlier that I'd show you an illustration of the finished Faux Valley plant. That's what it looks like. So upgrades to Ruakaka and the Whangarei water treatment plant. There's a new Port Road bridge and an improved intersection, you know that intersection at Port Road, Hikiawa Road that you look and you're not quite sure where you're going? Well, I do anyway. Improvements to that. Whananaki Wharf upgrade. There's a new cemetery at Ruakaka, which again the community have been asking for quite some time. We're also evaluating options for a new airport. Our airport is doesn't meet the standards required for the type of airport landing, the type of planes that we have. The runway is too short. And the only reason that it is allowed to operate is that there's a grandfather clause that allows it to operate. So obviously, if at some point that changed, we would be without an airport, which we clearly don't want. So it's a longer term project, but looking at where we could have a new airport. We'll continue the stormwater upgrades, very important, and sports park upgrades at Oakura and Hikarangi. So key dates for this consultation. The formal consultation ends on the 1st of April, which is an unfortunate date, but there we go. We do have a family fun day, which we'd like you to come along to. That's on the 27th of March at Pohe Island, William Fraser Memorial Park, 10 till 1. Lots of things for the whole family to do there, and we can talk about this some more. There will be hearings, so if you make a submission, you are also able to indicate that you would like to speak to your submission to the councillors, and those hearing dates will be on the 13th and 14th of April, so you're very welcome to make that indication, and we'd love to hear from you. Council will deliberate what they receive, all of the feedback they receive on the 12th of May, and I can assure you that the councillors do read all of the submissions, and there's a lot of them. So they will deliberate them on 12th of May, and the proposed date for adopting the revised long-term plan is on the 24th of June. So where to from here? Have a look at our consultation document, please. Attend one of our other events or the Family Fun Day if you're able to. Look at the website, read the document, and then please send us your feedback by the 1st of April so that we can make sure this plan is the best that we can make it for our community for the next 10 years. Now I'm happy to take questions, and what we're going to do is we're going to alternate between the online audience and the audience in here. So very happy to take questions. If you could raise your hand if you've got a question.
Do you want to introduce the staff?
We could introduce the staff if the staff want to be introduced, or we could introduce them as we go along if they answer questions. Yeah. So does anybody have any questions?
Does the question include feedback? If this is consultation?
It's more questions for clarification. We want your feedback as a submission. So yeah. Gentleman there.
So your projections about the growth today, does that include kind of the more move towards work from home type of arrangements that are actually coming out from the whole COVID year? Because more people have realized that they can work from home, and more companies have realized that they can actually allow people to work from home.
Insofar as we're able to, yes. It is quite difficult to get the data on that. We are assuming quite a high rate of growth because actually that's what we've seen. But your point is very well made, and we may well see at the next census that actually the growth is even above what we've projected.
Yes, you would expect more of the smaller towns around bigger cities to have more people move in there, because even if a small percentage of office workers realize that you don't need to be in a big city, that's going to cause a lot of growth in the smaller towns. Yeah.
Great question. Absolutely. Yeah. Online?
Yeah, great. So Lee asks, will the planned expansion of Northport also mean more investment in the Green Bay area?
So just to be clear, we're advocating for the planned expansion of Northport. It's not a guarantee. There is planned investment in the Bream Bay, and clearly we would take into account the needs depending on what that expansion looks like. Lady over here.
With the changes that you want to make to Rathbone, James and John Street, where are you putting the parking? Nothing that I saw up there included any parking.
That's a very good question, which I'm not able to answer. I'm just having a look round. Rob, have you got a response to that?
Kia ora everyone, Rob Furlong, I'm the Chief Executive. I think that's a classic thing to put in
Come up here.
Thanks, Rob.
Sorry, my name's Rob Furlong, I'm the Chief Executive of the Council. That's a good thing to put in for a submission. So one of the issues that councillors did look at in the early stages was whether a new parking building was required. What I would say is that the data that we have suggests, and we've got to get some new data because we're growing all the time, so it gets out of date, but it suggests that we probably have sufficient parking, but I know the community doesn't believe that, right? So there's a difference there between, and I think the issue is in a peak time. In a peak time, nobody ever has sufficient parking, and we certainly don't. But it is something that the council will definitely consider, so I would suggest that you put it in a submission that you think we need extra parking in town.
I was going to say, if you're going to open the new big building down at the waterfront, where is everyone going to park? Parking down there is shocking.
So what I can say is council has added, and I can't remember the number, but I think it's better part of 100 parks in the last 3 years, and a lot of those all within 500 metres of that. But at 500 metres, a lot of people don't like walking that far, but that's the distance that we use. But having said that, I get that. That is one of the pinch points. That area around the town basin is probably the most congested in the 150, 200 metres around the town basin. So that is an area where I think there's a legitimate point. But yeah, parking's an ongoing issue, and you definitely worth the submission. If you've got some good ideas about where it would go, that would be great too.
Great, thank you. Any more online questions?
Yeah, so Marmite asks, are there any plans to develop late night dining and entertainment downtown? Think about the money that could go into the economy if there were more bars in the CBD.
So that's why we're wanting to revitalise the CBD. That's what the plans around John Street and James Street are all about. So we would hope that by making those areas less vehicles in those areas, more parking, more trees, more seating, that actually it will encourage businesses in those areas. So, and then absolutely we want to see the growth that Marmite has described. Thank you. Gentleman in the red t-shirt.
I think it's interesting that there seems to be silence in the plan as far as Huntervatter is concerned. I found it interesting that Rugby World Cup has been deferred. I wonder whether there's any consideration being given to deferring the opening of Huntervatter, because as I understood it, 40% of the predicted visitor base was overseas visitors, and that won't be happening. So I wonder whether any sensitivities have been done on what the implication for that is, and all sorts of other things tied up with it. And I'm just wondering, what are we saying?
So,
there seems to be a complete silence.
Yeah, so
on
the reason that the Huntervatter project isn't in the plan is because there's no requirement for council to invest in it. It's got its funding, it has a plan, it's planning to open in, I think, December this year, and it's on track to do that. And the points you make around the changes that we've seen in tourism are valid. In practice, about 70-75% of our tourists are domestic tourists in Whangarei. But yes, they did make predictions around it, and they are considering how they're going to operate as a business. But that is a separate entity to council, and I'm sure you could ask that question of them. But yes, they are aware that they need to change their business plan. They're looking at doing that, and the project is sailing ahead, ready to go in December.
So the funding, I just want to be clear on this, because isn't there funding through the Arts Museum? Isn't that directly funded by council?
The Art Museum receives a grant from council, yes.
And they are the organisation that funds them?
Yes, yep.
So it does have a direct
The funding for the Huntervatter came from other means.
Yeah.
Some of it.
The point you make around the funding, there is no plans. You'll have seen our plans around for investment, and we've got no plans for investment in Huntervatter within our annual plan, within our long-term plan.
Either capital or revenue.
There's nothing in it about it, no.
Yeah. Okay, so, and it won't be categorically?
It's not in the plan. If you want to make a submission about that, you're very welcome to. But at the moment, it's not in the plan.
Okay. Thank you.
Dan, has Vicky got a question?
No, not at this stage.
Great. Gentleman at the front.
Yeah. I would like to ask a question about the program for the airport impact investigation. My concern is a helicopter operation has been run in Kensington. The noise levels 24 hours a day are outside the specification for the airport. So you've got it in the middle of a residential one area. Helicopters are specifically precluded from operating in that area, as is any helicopter operation. So I would like to know, when is that going to be addressed? It's unacceptable. It's outside New Zealand standards. There are standards for health and mental health, and it's outside that, and it is offensive 24 hours a day.
Great. So if you could put that in your submission, that would be great. And we will look at it and respond to it through the process. Gentleman at the back.
Tim Howard from Northland Housing Forum and a few other housing related entities. My question is partly, I have to frame it slightly. My question is there a budget line within the long-term plan about developing a housing plan for the district that is actually particularly focused on adequate and affordable housing? That is a major issue from a lot of our perspectives, and part of the context is there are a number of developers carrying on, but the incoming housing is of quite an expensive rate out of people's reach. Where is the broader housing plan, and would money be considered to be allocated to the formation of such a proactive plan?
Okay, so in terms of funding within the plan directly related to housing, there is funding in there for older people's housing, and indeed an expansion, a modest expansion in that. There is no funding as you've described Council's role within that, within the context of enabling more affordable housing within the district, is really its role within its district plan and its planning guidelines, particularly around enabling higher density housing rather than large plots in some areas. So no, Council doesn't have a plan for developing housing because that is not our role, but we do have guidelines within our district plan that actually...
How Council developing housing. I was talking about how Council developing a housing plan. Like Lower Hutt has, for example, a plan around homelessness, what a number of other councils have. But we seem to be lacking in that territory, and I'm just wondering if it could be put in as a budget line, the developing of a forward-looking plan in housing. So it's not just responsive to developing.
Yeah, you make a good point. It's not in our plan at the moment, but if you feel passionately about it, which you clearly do, I'd ask you to make a submission on that. Thank you. Online.
Yeah, so Ciela asks, what sort of projects will the waste management funding go to? Can we be a low impact town? And specifically, she'd like to see more money in planning going into recycling more items, like Tetra Pak boxes.
Right. So our funding is looking at what we can do to, what we need to do around climate adaptation. It's looking at what we can do to minimise our impact on the environment. We are looking at recycling. At the moment, we recycle ones, twos, and glass, and a fair amount of those. And I'm just looking to see whether anybody else has got any more detail on that. Rob, have you got more information on the sustainability aspect of our plan? Could you come to the front, please?
So in terms of waste minimisation, some of the things that have gone on lately with the blue bins themselves, so we're now recycling glass much better, and you will have noticed that during lockdown we were one of the few councils that was recycling during that period of time. So we have already a pretty good recycling infrastructure. Recycling is tricky at the moment because you may have again seen China stopped accepting a whole lot of material, and so a whole lot of material went from being profitable to recycled to unprofitable. So lots of places are looking at alternatives, and some of this money will work out what sort of alternatives we can use now that the Chinese aren't taking a lot of that recycling. We have a pretty good system now, but a lot of it is, as I say, we'll be experimenting with new ways of doing things. And I also know there are a lot of proposals before government at the moment to build specialist recycling facilities. Some of those proposals are actually in Northland. What you need for good recycling is scale, and because we're close to Auckland, we've actually got a good advantage because we can piggyback off what Auckland does. So that money will be going into a few specific projects about recycling and waste minimisation, but also into working out new ideas of how we can recycle.
Thank you. Another online question.
Yeah, so Michelle asks, freedom campers are having a big impact on the city at the moment. Is there anything in the plan about what we do about freedom camping?
There's nothing specifically in the plan about freedom camping. However, Council recently reviewed its freedom camping policy and revised it, and that is available on the website for people to look at. Gentleman in the check shirt.
So I was looking at the sustainability proposal, and it seems like it's a very low amount being actually spent on sustainability. What's actually budgeted for that? What is that amount budgeted for?
So the 3.7 million.
Yes.
I couldn't give you the detail on exactly what it's going to be spent on, but I can certainly get that for you if we catch up afterwards.
For 10 years. So
it's 3.7 million for 10 years, so 370,000 a year over 10 years. So I can get the detail on that for you. I don't have it to hand, but we've been doing actions particularly around climate change for probably the last 20 years in terms of the infrastructure that we build, the roading that we build, stormwater, all of those kind of things. It's not something that we suddenly started doing, but we want to do more of it. In terms of what the 3.7 million over 10 years is going to be spent on, I'm not entirely sure, I haven't got the detail, but I will get it for you.
Sure, Sandra.
Kia ora.
I talk about climate change. I have a query about the validity of the Oroku Event Centre on the river with climate change, etc., and global warming. This particular place it's in, parking, it's not big enough, and the fact that it will, in the way it's reading, the way it's going, end up as a council asset and a community asset, and the total project is about $93.7 million evidently, and it's sitting in such a vulnerable position, and we've got that sitting there, a community asset right beside the river, and it's not big enough, and I'd rather see a whole lot of money being put into the current event centre and putting a roof over the whole field, so we can actually have decent concerts and things with a lot of people. And my other thing I was going to query is, it's either 1 or 3. Can it be 2?
It can be whatever you think is appropriate. So please, if you've got other ideas, and put them in your submission.
But I still would like to hear something about how council can validate putting that much money into something. Just because the government's offering all that money doesn't mean you actually have to take it.
No, absolutely right. It is a choice, and that's why we're consulting with our community on it. $60 million is a lot of money for a district to turn down. This is council, and council doesn't have a choice about what it's going to build for that $60 million. It's a bit like, I'm going to buy a car. I'm not going to let the car dealer tell me what car I'm going to buy. So the government has specified what that money is for, and it's for an events and conference centre at the Uruku Landing. So that's what we've been offered. We think, as a council, actually that's a good lot of money. It would be a good facility for us to have. It would offer us a big conference venue that we don't have currently. Potentially it could attract other businesses like hotels that we don't have at the moment, 4-star hotels. So our view at the moment is it looks like a good offer and something that we should prioritise, but that's why we're consulting on it. If you don't think that's true, then put it in your submission and let us know what your ideas are, and council will consider those.
Because originally it wasn't a council plan, was it?
No.
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 Council is still paying us.
Yeah, council was still contributing $17 million originally. The reason that it's now $23 million is because we have to pick up additional costs over time, and if it's a council asset, council's responsible for the risk around a construction project, as you probably guessed. So it's a choice. So please give us your feedback on it. Online?
Yeah, so Shara says that we talk a lot about growth. It's going to take a lot of engineers, and there's going to need to be a lot of resource consent. What's council doing to support that sector of the economy, and how can we speed up the building consent process?
We'd love your feedback on that. We acknowledge that with all of the growth that we've seen, there have been delays in our resource consents and building consents, and we are looking at how we can get that process improved. Engineers are a very rare breed, very highly skilled, and we quite often have to go externally for our engineering advice. But yes, we acknowledge what you're saying, and please provide us with feedback on how you think we can address that. Any more questions online? No? Any more in the room? No? Yeah, Councillor Coccarello suggested that I highlight to you on what page is it?
42 and 43.
Page 42 and 43. In the plan, shows you a bit of a layout of all the major projects. It's a different way of looking at what's in the presentation, so you might want to have a look at that. Now we're going to hang around for a little while afterwards and have a cup of tea and a biscuit, I think, with you. So I will close the meeting with a karakia, and then we'll go and have a cup of tea.
Just for the meeting, although some of your questions were asked, you probably didn't get the answer you like. Councillors, we went out with a plan to get your ideas. That's why we are contributing to the meetings. That's why the councillors, we're going to be the judge on the applications and on your submissions. So thanks for the question we got, and certainly get everyone thinking. But pretty similar question we're getting at previous meetings, so that's a good fair bit of consistency there. So thank you.
Yeah. So thank you very much for attending. Mai te timatanga ki te whakamotuna, ki runga ki raro, ki waho runga ki roto, o pai Māori. Thank you for coming, thank you for watching online, thank you for your questions. We look forward to receiving and reading your submissions, and have a very good evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.